Hi there, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we are going to talk about the Aquarius full moon, which is taking place on July 26th of 2026. And this looks to me like the loudest, the most significant full moon that we're going to be getting in 2026. So we're going to peel back all the layers as to why that is. First, we're going to get into some of the technical details around that. We will talk about this on a kind of collective energetic level of how we're all likely to experience this together. We'll look at it on a kind of global prediction level. We'll also look at this in the context of the United States natal chart, because this is activating that chart in a really intense way that I want to get into. We'll then go ahead and look at this through the lens of each rising sign or sun sign to see how this is most likely to impact you. So let's get right into this. One of the loudest things about this full moon is that it's perfectly aligning with this basket pattern, which we've been discussing recently, which is really one of the most mind-blowing alignments that we've seen with all of the outer planets, and then a little bit earlier Jupiter as well. They were all lined up at 4 degrees of their respective air and fire signs. And this has been really dominating July. And then we get this full moon coming through, reactivating and empowering this whole configuration. Of course, we can see here the moon is conjunct to Pluto. So this is really intense, very transformative kind of a full moon to have in and of itself. But then on the other side, we see something that is certainly very rare when it comes to this occurring during a full moon, which is this Jupiter cazimi. And that happens when the sun is within 17 arc minutes of an exact conjunction with a planet. This only happens for several hours of one day per year. For those several hours to contain a full moon, very rare. So we have all of these really powerful configurations all layering on top of each other during this alignment. We also then have a very close square between Venus in the sky and Mars, and both of these are in Mercury-ruled signs. So they're very much conflicting with each other about a specific kind of a topic, about how to go about something. This really winds up increasing the drama, the potential belligerence of arguments, the creative tension, the drama to this moment, the defiance as well to this moment. Now, fortunately, we do also have Mercury in a sextile to Venus, which is helping to mitigate this square just a little bit. So we'll talk about how this is all likely to wind up impacting us. And the vibe of this is really intense. I can't overstate that. It's also highly engaged. So it's not just that this is going to be an energy that's kind of imposed upon us, but we're actively going to be addressing and engaging with this energy. We're likely to find this impacting us internally in our social connections, in our life and our circumstances, but also on a global stage, we'll definitely see this turn into some sort of conflagration, probably many different conflagrations. It's very dramatic. There's going to be a lot of different energies trying to force us to take sides on different issues, which we may or may not want to get involved with. It's also very creative. So if you are a creative type, this is likely to be stirring you up quite a bit. There's a real generative quality to this energy. Again, very defiant, very rebellious kind of energy here, in particular due to this opposition between the sun and Jupiter on this side and then the moon and Pluto on the other side of that. Pushing and pulling, these notions of who has the right to do what is the power balance within any given situation. And that's also then going to be getting stirred up by that square between Venus and Mars, which could wind up having some of this defiance and rebelliousness either impact notions of gender on a global stage or our relationships, our connections, our conversations with each other, our plans with each other. We could start to feel like we are pushing and pulling when it comes to each other as well. Ultimately, this is going to really reinforce the transformative quality of this moment. If you've been paying attention to the astrology of July, we are likely to find ourselves in a very different world on the other side of this. And the potency of that is getting raised while it's also then being infused into our everyday mundane lives through the fact that the full moon is also reactivating this alignment. So this looks to me like there's a lot of potential for very powerful breakthroughs here. A lot of this, I think, is going to be for the better. Now, some of what this winds up revealing to us, we may not love, but it's best to know. And one of the things that I find so special about this full moon is that a full moon is, of course, fully illuminated by the light of the sun. But when we have a cazimi, what that refers to is that Jupiter is at the heart of the sun. It's considered to be like on the throne of the sun, and it melds its energy, its quality with the sun. I adore this in this moment because then what that full moon is carrying is not just on a qualitative level, the light of the sun. It's also receiving a lot of the light of Jupiter, which is very benefic. It is very creative, especially when it's in Leo. It's very expansive. It can feel like wonderful luck and timing, like things coming into a sense of order. There's a real wisdom and knowledge of bringing things together that Jupiter winds up pulling into a lot of this energy. And that energy is getting infused into this full moon, which is on Pluto there. So yes, this is likely to be very intense and even conflictual, but I feel like this winds up turning out incredibly well, better than we would have designed it ourselves, right? Now, additionally, this full moon is ruled by Saturn. Saturn itself is stationing and it's in its fall. I really think that this is going to wind up undermining the status quo, undermining convention, undermining the old power dynamics, the old ways of doing things that are imposed upon either ourselves in our own personal lives or on populations. So given the rebelliousness of this, that I think is what that's going to wind up looking like. We could probably summarize that as like a push and pull around democratic will versus centralized power. So we'll talk about that in a moment. First, I want to talk about this on a collective energetic level, how we're likely to just kind of feel this energy in our own lives and in our own interactions with each other. So this looks like a massive turning point. I don't know if you've already been feeling it in July, this basket pattern as it's been forming all month. I certainly have. I know a lot of people have been feeling like there's something in the air. There's something that is shifting and changing, and it almost feels like it's a calling, like a call to action. And so within our own personal lives, anything that we've been holding back on, our own, again, creative impulses, our eccentric qualities, those are really going to be empowered in this moment. So there's this real intensity of willpower that we can channel toward what we're passionate about. Now, that may be a passion project, creative inspiration to that end, the liberation from doubts or limitations or impositions that would hold us back from really pouring our hearts into that. That's one of the things that I absolutely love about that Jupiter cazimi lighting up this full moon. The amount of heart that's built into a Jupiter cazimi there with the sun in Leo, that is all of our heart, all of our passion that we can pour into that moon and make something that really has a lot of impact, that has a major transformative quality for ourselves, even transforming our own sense of self. So freeing us up, not just from the impositions from the outside, but the impositions that we place on ourselves as well. So the structural restrictions or limitations, but also those on an internal or an emotional, psychological level as well. This is also likely going to be stirring up our sense of our convictions, our morality. I do feel like there's going to be this overwhelming sense, and this is going to be on a personal level, collective, global. Good versus evil, I think, is going to wind up dominating the conversation toward the end of July here. We may feel that there's a need to take sides in either specific issues, and I would kind of lean a little bit more that way of choosing our battles, because there's going to be a lot of different side conflicts and battles going on within this around right and wrong. And of course, we can't fully pour our heart into every single one of those necessarily. But what is it that really animates you? Recognizing that there are all manner of people globally, we can all wave our own flag, and we don't all need to play like a central role in waving a flag for every different thing, every different injustice. Standing our ground where we can, I think, is going to be important. A lot of that is probably going to be around how we have felt caged in, where we have felt like our light has been dimmed, maybe in recent years, recent decades. This is probably going to be for a lot of different people, this kind of intergenerational thing. So where is there injustice in the world? I would not be too shy to step up where you feel like that does impact you, specifically because Leo is such a personal sign, but who better to wave our own banner? Who better to stick up for ourselves than us? And then through that activity, we can wind up building our own selves up, building up our sense of confidence and self-esteem. our willingness to insist upon the ability to channel our will where we desire. So refusing to be caged in. Now, whenever we get Jupiter, Pluto aspects going on, especially in an opposition like this, and then getting highlighted by this full moon, likely there's going to be notions of finance, financial power dynamics going on. Now, for some people, this could wind up looking like a windfall. But if you do find yourself in some financial position that feels limiting or feels like it's unhealthy, this is likely to bring a lot of clarity to that. And it doesn't just have to be financial, but with these two, it often is. But any sort of a power dynamic where you feel like you need to not step on someone's toes, or you need to play small in order to make someone else feel comfortable because you're kind of afraid of how they may react. One, this is likely to bring a lot of light to that, to point that out, to have you not question yourself about what's going on with that anymore. But it's also likely to open a lot of opportunity for you to free yourself from that. This may even help with enabling other people to see these things. If you are especially attuned to an imbalance, and maybe it's been frustrating, maybe other people haven't seen it, this is going to help a lot of people to see these things in their own personal lives and around them. This is also likely to bring up a lot of notions about attachment versus independence within connections as well. Attachment versus detachment, feeling like you're at a distance versus feeling like you're kind of all in on a situation. So we may feel a little at odds with ourselves about that, about should we be objective about something, or should we really lean into how our hearts are affected by any given situation. Maybe it is a relationship, maybe it's a circumstance, maybe it's something we deeply care about, and sometimes we convince ourselves, well, let's be objective about it. I can't really give you an answer on which is going to be the better way to go when it comes to that. All I can preach there is some notion of perhaps temperance and then move from that space. So if you can bring that into balance, and then if there is a compelling sense of maybe I should be more objective about this or detach, or maybe I should go all in or really follow my heart when it comes to something, approaching that from a position of temperance, from a position of balance, I think is going to be helpful with this intensity that's going to be going on around late July. What is most getting stirred up about this basket pattern, I think, with this full moon, of course, it is tied into this whole configuration of Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter here. But what we have is absolutely another opposition between these two signs here, between Leo and Aquarius. So the drama, the conflictual nature of that, the fact that these are pretty evenly matched powers to be confronting each other, is likely to stir up an increase in the drama, an increase in the conflict. I do think that the culprit to the drama is likely to be, in most of these situations, imposition upon others, which we can't really do. That's not really justified. That's where I think a lot of, our personal problems and our global problems wind up coming in, is this notion of being able to control others. We can only really justifiably control ourselves. So if you do find yourself in a conflict, or dealing with notions of envy, or dealing with this kind of undermining quality from other people, sometimes Pluto can be pretty insidious that way, where it won't directly conflict with something, but it'll do it in kind of a passive aggressive way, or it'll try to kind of attack something from underneath or from the side. Try and look at, is there essentially an attempt to control someone else, or another way of putting that, something of an abuse of power? I think that some people are going to seem to appear to expect others to exalt them or to hold them in special regard. And that always winds up turning out messy. That's probably going to be part of the root of a lot of the conflicts that are going on here. So that's what I would really pay attention to when it comes to this, and try and maybe step away. That's part of the, let's maybe not take sides on every single thing, because we can't know everything about every given issue or every given conflict. And so if we wind up giving into the imposition of you need to take sides on this, and you don't know the full picture, you could accidentally wind up like aligning yourself in a way that you wouldn't love to if you had all of the facts. So that's probably top line what I would warn about the most, or what I would kind of caution about the most with this, is getting involved in conflicts that you don't fully understand. Now, finally, there's something so revelatory about this that's what I think is really wonderful, is that the light that's being brought to the situation there's this sense of goodwill that's baked into it with that Jupiter cazimi. Jupiter brings a goodwill to a situation. And so that which is being shown to us, whether it be about ourselves, our emotional or psychological dynamics, our patterns of behavior, all of those of others, global situations, different perspectives, different ideologies, different sides of conflicts, be they close to us or far away, it is for our good that this is being brought to us. It may not be what we want to see, but it is true when we're dealing with Jupiter. Now, one thing I want to get into as we shift kind of from the collective energy into the global predictions here, I want to talk about the decans that are being highlighted here. So a decan astrologically is a 10-degree part of the sky. The zodiac signs are 30-degree parts of the sky, but the decans are older. And this first decan of Aquarius and the first decan of Leo are going to be incredibly important when it comes to what is the underlying meaning, the trajectory, the intention of these conflagrations and major changes and the intensity, the turning point that we find ourselves in at this moment. So this first decan of Aquarius, this got highlighted in a really strong way early in the year. So like right at the end of January into the beginning of February, we had a ton of planets here with Pluto. So we had the Sun, we had Mercury and Venus and Mars were all here with Pluto. So this is already a place that's kind of gotten primed and is probably to some extent getting reactivated when it comes to what was going on during that time by this full moon. Now, we saw a lot of stirring of conflict. This was when the ice stuff was really at a peak, when they were in Minnesota and there were those shootings. That was really animating a lot of people. We also saw what looked to me like stuff that was going on in back rooms about conflict and war on a covert level at that point, because everything was blurred out by the sun, because the sun was also there. We were in the planning stages, public didn't know about it, of the Iran war, which wound up getting activated when we had the eclipse, the solar eclipse in Aquarius in February, and then Mars came through and wound up aligning to that. When it wound up squaring Uranus was when that wound up hitting. That war wound up suddenly commencing. We also saw a lot of activity around Venezuela and Greenland. Additionally, China does have its moon here, and it also has its ascendant here. We did see that there was something of a purge of the military during that time, because it seems like there were some portions of that were doing things that were untoward, and so they wound up getting pushed out. So this full moon is definitely also very much activating that period of time, what happened then for China, but also China's chart in general. Now, what's interesting about this decan is that it's associated with the Five of Swords, which is itself conflictual. It can even be quite base. It can be pretty nasty in the sense of not just wanting to win a fight, but wanting for others to lose. So this kind of zero-sum attitude. Now, on the other hand, though, there is a rebelliousness to this decan as well. And so it can be quite eccentric. It's called the Mark of Exile by Austin Coppock in his addressing of the decans. It's associated with marginality, with outsiders, with workers, being outside of the standard reality system, and a sense of liberation from it as well. This being from 36 Faces by Austin Coppock. So he speaks of this decan in a way that I think speaks to this moment and speaks to some of that objectivity, that distance, that not getting super involved in every different thing that I was referring to there, where he refers to it as like freedom through exile. And he even has this quote that I really like about it, where he says, "Herein is the sweetness and peace which exists above the muddy tumult of life. The satellite's view of the world is always beautiful, no matter how hellish the situation below." And so by not feeling tied in, attached in the way that Leo can become to situations, by being in that more objective perspective, this can help quite a bit to not attach yourself to things that aren't good for you or that are not supportive of you. Now, on the other side, we also then have the Sun and Jupiter in Leo in this first decan of Leo. And that's also very significant. This is, of course, then associated with the Five of Wands. So the Five of Swords is always going to be opposite to the Five of Wands in the decans. This also speaks to competition, but also drama. ego, attention, sabotage, the persona, the roles that we play. It's much more theatrical here. So this is more along the lines of politics. So of course, there's this quote of politics is war by other means. That really seems to play into this as well. The power dynamics, we're going to talk about that in a moment here. There can be some questionable characters that wind up showing up in this place, really trying to get people on board for what they're doing. That's another reason why I'm like, try and watch out for the imposition of you need to take my side on this or that kind of a thing. Additionally, Copic refers to this area as potentially drawing attention away from what's really going on, or there's this notion of concealment. And that's something that I also definitely associate with this first decan of Aquarius, particularly this year as well, because as all those planets were going through this area earlier this year, they were all blotted out by the sun. They were not visible. So I think there's going to be some kind of major breakthrough of revelation here. There may be some things that are some information that's really bursting onto the scene for our own good, even if it's some pretty yucky stuff that we don't want to know about. And I think that this is going to really help us on a societal level, on a global level, to move through this moment into a better direction, to improve upon this moment, to let this be the nadir, basically, to move upward from here. Now, it's definitely going to require a lot of engagement, without a doubt, and a lot of different people democratically pushing on the issues that are important to them, getting involved. On a global level, this basket pattern, generally speaking, so all throughout July, we have this major seeding moment around this very significant alignment that is societally, historically important. But as I mentioned, it is the conflictual nature of that opposition between Jupiter and Pluto that's getting especially highlighted here. So this is a moment that is likely to be truly explosive, especially in terms of claims to power by leadership, centralization, a desire to like grab, take around notions of power. However, no matter how anti-democratic this appears to be, there will be intense pushback and major consequences to attempting to do this, especially over any sort of abuse of power, abuse of resources, abuse of control that's going on in this moment. One, it's likely to receive the immediate backlash of a conflagration around that, pushback, fighting over that. But there's also likely to be a lot of consequences to this down the road as well. So doing things that are underhanded because one feels that it advances their agenda, either on an ideological level or on a personal power level, I don't think that that's going to wind up working out. It may look pretty rough toward the end of July here. We're also then going immediately, our next lunations after this full moon are both going to be the eclipses for this season. So we are basically launching ourselves through this really crazy full moon right into eclipse season. The sands are shifting in this moment, and when you do get into eclipse season, things get incredibly consequential, and you can wind up with someone who is in a position that seems untouchable, just have the legs knocked out from under them. Or perhaps in the notion of that Jupiter on its throne in that cazimi, have the throne knocked out from under them. So yes, I absolutely expect to see very outsized abuse of power, potential fighting and vying over this. We could see as well some major like palace intrigue, some deeply cold and calculating moves against leaders or undermining the law. I think there's going to be a huge amount of backroom stuff going on. We could see leaders forced out. We could see legal battles, corporate battles, war between big forces. We could see this on an international level as well. I kind of expect that, unfortunately. Again, I think that this is going to center around these narratives of good versus evil, but it's important to remember that different sides view those notions differently. So what we see as good, other people see as evil, and vice versa. Now, that's not to say that morality is relative. I think that Jupiter is really going to have its thumb on notions of genuine justice here. But when it comes to the narrative, of course, keeping that in mind, I think is important. There's also likely to be a huge amount of action and propaganda around all of this too. So we could really see some street action, some people getting deeply involved. We could even see some of this impacting like big tech or the AI companies. We could see a lot of pushback around that, maybe even the initiative of like movements around that as well. I think as well with these energies that we're likely to see this kind of coming together, a moment of moral clarity or reckoning that is going to be very powerful. And I think that that's going to be the marker when we look back like 10 years down the line of, oh, July of 2026, this is what wound up coming out of that moment, that this will look like from the outside looking in a moment of moral clarity, a moment of reckoning, kind of the beginning of the end for a lot of the corruption that we're struggling with on a global level right now. So what we're getting here in this seeding moment, we can also look at this as this is this year's seeding moment, the beginning of the cycle of Jupiter for this year because of the cazimi, the conjunction to the sun is very important. And when is that happening? But under this full moon that's conjunct to Pluto. This is really powerful around notions of decentralization and social consciousness. So I do think that this is a moment of the seeding of a new era of social consciousness. That's what this basket really looks like. And this full moon is reinforcing that. A lot of activism, I expect, a lot of awareness, a lot of discourse, and talking to each other about our ideals and how we would like for society to function, how we can improve upon what we have, how we can get involved in helping each other, supporting our communities, a greater sense of understanding, new solutions, new institutions, new leadership that's going to be seated in this moment as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some people also burst onto the scene that are going to represent some of a new guard of leadership in this moment as well. Now, as I mentioned, I do think that some of this is going to center around gender issues too. So this square between Venus and Mars on a mundane level, often it does bring up issues of the treatment of women or the balance between men and women. There's likely to be, with both of these in Mercury-ruled signs, a lot of argumentation around that, a lot of discourse around that. I do think that given the sextile between the ruler of both of these planets, they're in Virgo and Gemini, so both of these are ruled by Mercury, which is in a sextile to Venus here. So it does look like women are going to be making some important points during this period of time. It's going to be important, I think, to hear that out, basically. There may be something about like people finding their voices in this moment. So we may even find that this is not only global on like an international or a national level or whatnot, but this may be impacting a lot of women in their own personal lives of what it is that they are willing and not willing to put up with, or what kind of dynamics they are wanting to experience in their relationships. And we may see a major increase in the amount of individual women who are responding to this notion that they want to improve upon their relationships. They want to have better connections, more balance, greater understanding here. So before we get into the USA and how this is so highlighting that chart, I'm just going to throw out some other names and countries here of charts that are getting very, very, very closely impacted by this alignment here. In particular, this beginning part of Aquarius is very relevant in the charts of Volodymyr Zelensky, China, of course, as I mentioned, both Russia and Ukraine, Maduro, Israel. That's opposite to the moon of Israel, which is at around, I think it's 4, 5, 6 degrees of Leo. Germany as well, Georgia, Lebanon, Howard Lutnick, Nicolas Maduro, Ghislaine Maxwell, Spain, and the Andro formerly known as Prince. So we may see some things here about Epstein as well, some more developments along those lines. We did see that get stirred up when we had the stellium up here, and we were expecting that then as well, and it did. I think that was actually about when we started getting a bunch of disclosures of names, was around the end of January, early February there. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about this in the context of the USA chart. We've been talking about the USA chart quite a bit. We usually do on a weekly basis. If something's aligned to the USA chart, tend to bring it up on the membership side, but I haven't really talked about a lot of the stuff that's going on in the US chart on the main channel. So I'm going to kind of cover this as this is all happening during this full moon, and that's important. But a lot of these things are going to be playing out for some time. And I want to come back to this. I want to point this kind of stuff out on the main channel here. So as we can see, there's a crazy amount of alignments that are going on here that are very, very, very important. So this full moon basically is running across the nodal axis of the United States. This is basically the roots, the past, where the country is coming from, our comfort zone. And the North Node here is about like, how are we growing? How are we improving upon ourselves? What are we reaching for? What are our ideals? And so we can see this opposition between the moon and Pluto over here, and then the sun and Jupiter over here is very much highlighting that. Now, I love the sun and Jupiter on the North Node. I think that that is going to come in as a major helping hand to pushing the country in a better direction, even if it is against the will of some of the leadership or even some of the population. I think that this is really going to be highlighting, this is where you are meant to be growing toward. Now, the power dynamics, the outsized control and things like this, the fact that on some level, I think a lot of us feel like we have to, through rebellion, through strife, experience any sort of growth that we're going to have. I think that that is really getting highlighted here. Now, we're very willing to do that in this moment. I think people are pretty riled up, and we can absolutely see that in this chart. Of course, we see, Moon and Pluto on this South Node in the third house of like the conscious mind of the population, our debates. Direct action tends to show up in the third house there. We also, of course, have our Mars return and our Uranus return. And our Mars-Uranus here is part of the reason why we are pretty rebellious as a country. So yeah, that's definitely something we're willing to do in this moment. Should we often have to have these big conflagrations around any sort of improvement of the nation or pushing ourselves forward? I don't really think that that's entirely necessary, but at least the Sun and Jupiter are holding that door way open and saying, come this way, go for growth, go for improvement, go for a greater sense of inclusion and care for the nation. This is also likely to be, again, U.S. leaders, a new guard of U.S. leaders that are coming into the foreground here that are getting noticed. This is a huge amount of visibility. So absolutely all eyes are going to be on the U.S. That's often the case, but in this moment, that's definitely going to be highlighted for some big reason. Now, I worry a little bit about what that reason is, given that we have a very close Mars return under this full moon, and Uranus is also almost as close as it's going to get this year to the exact return of Uranus. This has been highlighted every time that we've gotten into one of the bigger, more like major nation defining wars that we've been in. So of course we were born under the Mars Uranus while we were splitting off from Britain. We had Uranus come back around again during the Civil War. We also then had Uranus come back around again during World War II. And now we have Uranus coming back again for a fourth time. So this is part of the reason why I would imagine that you've heard astrologers refer to probably this is going to wind up turning into one of a major conflict that winds up being quite defining of the nation. I don't love that omen here, but I can't avoid the fact that it's there. Again, I don't think that we have to do things this way every time, but we are, of course, very much riled up. And could that be turned either outward against an outsider exile kind of a community, again with the decan that's getting highlighted by that full moon, in some kind of an attempt of leadership to hold on to power and redirect the population's frustrations? Absolutely. Could we also see that internally, turning the anger and frustration of the population about how things are working out in their own lives towards some segment of the US population in this kind of divide and conquer tactic that all too often works on the US and its population? Absolutely. I should say that's not really unique to the US, but we do fall into it quite a bit. We also then have this opposition between Saturn and the nation Saturn that's going on. So the Saturn opposition is coming up. As I mentioned, this Saturn is stationed, so it's extra loud, and it's in a place that it hates to be. And the reason for that is that Saturn typically exalts in Libra, where the nation natally has its own Saturn. It makes perfect sense given the nation's history that this rules the second and the third house. So the population, the interests of the population, and then financial interests within the country, those both being represented in the 11th house, which is the legislature. But what we have here is an opposition to that. And again, it's very loud because it's stationed. And so we could really see a major like partisan divide going on here. We could see the political fights over the midterms that are coming up really get to a fever pitch in July. We could see a lot of very regressive like conflict or language or attempts to control outcomes that are coming up here. We also do see that this is all in a square to the United States sun, which usually represents the president at any given time. And so there may be a need by both sides to rein in the executive as well. That would not surprise me in this. But the fact that we have Saturn stationed in opposition to our own Saturn does really highlight how impactful and how conflictual and potentially how nasty and separative the midterms are likely to be here. Now, also during this full moon in particular, we do also see Venus on the Neptune of the nation, which is bringing up notions of, hey, what are your ideals? What are you actually trying to do here? What do you believe in as a nation? And a lot of us have very strong opinions about that. And a lot of that is very idealistic. So there's a lot of an appeal by the sun and then the two benefics, Venus and Jupiter, which tend to be helpers. There's this appeal to our better angels of the North Node and Neptune way up in the sky here. And this may seem to fly in the face a bit of the centralization of power, of the potential for conflict, maybe even the notion of the unity of the nation as well, because Venus and Jupiter are always calling for unity, for harmony, for coming together. And so we're very likely to see appeals to that, maybe by some of the new leadership being very idealistic as well. And again, I do mean that in a positive way. Now, in addition to Venus being on our Neptune, we do also have Neptune is going to be dancing around. Opposite to this MC is down here, it would say IC if I had that turned on there. And Neptune is going to be dancing around that point. It's retrograde right now. It's going to go back and pretty much conjoin that and then move on. And over the coming couple of years, it is going to be kind of pushing over that point now. And that is also stirring up notions of what are our ideals, especially our founding ideals, with that being the Imam Kuli. That speaks directly to our past and our roots. And with this as a national chart of the notion of the nation, which was founded in this moment, which is July 4th, 1776 is this chart. So there is going to be a lot of coming back to and narrativizing that and appeals again to those original notions that we had about what we were doing with this nation, why we were founding it, what the beliefs were around that. And finally, I want to point out that this Mercury retrograde that we have just gone through, it's going to be direct by the time this full moon happens. But that Mercury did go out to the Mercury of the United States and it turned retrograde. And as you can see, this little RX that's right below this Mercury here, that is the nation's Mercury is retrograde. And so when we get a Mercury turning retrograde on that Mercury retrograde, that does seem quite significant. Again, especially in Cancer, this is likely thinking back to our past. Now, again, there may be something of an idealization of the roots of the nation, where we're coming from, what we believe in, what our ideals are. But it does show that so many of us are thinking about that we're focused on that, especially as we came up on this retrograde actually happened right around like the 250th birthday. So the whole, America 250 thing that came up this past July 4th. I'm sure a lot of people were thinking about, 250 years, like how far have we come? And so we can see a lot of people have their minds on this, but this is also the Mercury in our chart. It is also the 10th house ruler. It's the 7th house ruler. So it's very important. And it does have a lot to do with our relationship with other nations, with our notion of what our ambitions are as a nation. So not just like, where are we coming from, but what are we idealizing about what our future looks like and who we are and what we're meant to be in the world, what our mark on the world is meant to be. And where do we stand with that? Do we feel like we do have a leg to stand on as a global leader right now? Where do we feel like that comes in? Because I can't deny that the US tends to look at itself as, a leader in the world. So is that reasonable right now? And if it's not, what are we supposed to do about that? How could we live better by our ideals? How could we get back to that? Or how could we come to that, maybe even for the first time, if our ideals are quite lofty? Now, this is all to say that there's something that's going on that looks very destined to me. It does look like the nation is being pulled, maybe kicking and screaming to some extent, in a better direction, almost by the fates or by destiny here. I think that this is going to require some extent of a reckoning. We can see that what's coming up in the coming couple of years is also a nodal opposition here. So the north node will be coming to our south node and vice versa. So we're definitely going to be getting checked, and anything that needs to be swept aside in order to keep this door open for us to reach to what we want the nation to be, to how we want to move forward from here, could be cleared out in not the prettiest of ways, or in very forceful or imposed ways. And it may feel, again, very destined or very fated. I am recording this video as we had a near passing and a passing of a couple of senators. We are going to be, like I said, on the other side of this full moon, coming into eclipse season. So best not to be the thing that's getting in the way of progress, I would say. And I think a solid reminder before we even get into eclipse season, before I start covering those videos, which are probably going to be coming up quite soon here, that I'm going to be getting into those. Always be on your best behavior. Always act in integrity when we're coming into eclipse season. That is very, very important. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for us. I think this is going to be such a huge alignment. I hope that you are already feeling some of the stirring, some of the inspiration, maybe also some of the frustrations that go along with that are getting stirred up in order to encourage you to push through those, to get to the other side of whatever is holding you in that space of frustration, whatever feels like it is constraining you. Again, I have timestamps for all of the horoscopes, which should clarify how this is most likely to impact you in your own life as well. And that is going to be foremost for your ascendant. And then those horoscopes are going to align perfectly for your whole sign houses in your chart. But also absolutely feel free to adjust for Placidus houses if you want to do that, or check for your sun as well, or for your progressed ascendant as well. So with all of that said, if you enjoyed this video and you don't mind giving it a like or a hype, I would really greatly appreciate that. Consider sticking around by subscribing. As I mentioned, I think we're about to go into some big eclipse videos coming up here, so that's going to be pretty fun. There's information in the description box and in the pinned comment for personal bookings, as well as membership perks, including weekly forecasts, where I tend to go into all of this global stuff every single week. There's also monthly courses on that side, and there are discounts on readings as well as free reading drawings every month. So check that out. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. And thank you so much to the members of this channel for your support. It really means the world to me. Much love to you all. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the sign by sign. All right, so for Aries, we have the full moon in Aquarius taking place in your 11th house. So this is the place of your social groups that you belong to, of your hopes, dreams, aspirations, your long-term goals, the teams that you work on, colleagues, etc. So you're likely to see some kind of a culmination point around all of that. There could be a lot of focus on this area, so this could be a lot of time that you're needing to spend dealing with or connecting with social groups that you belong to, with friends, any communities that you have, colleagues. Teamwork and collaboration may seem like it is taking more of your focus during this period of time than usual. You may be wrapping up or completing some kind of a project that you're working on with people, or it could be reaching some kind of a turning point, basically, any sort of projects that you're working on with people. And when it comes to any sort of projects or group activities that you're working on, there's also likely to be a huge amount of visibility that's coming to you from that, or encouragement, recognition around that. And that can be absolutely wonderful. That can really wind up opening doors for you. You may be making a really wonderful impression upon people in positions of power or influence who are able to help you with like a leg up. So especially with that full moon being there with Pluto and you shining really brightly and getting this major boost of this cazimi of Jupiter with the sun there. It's not just that the sun is lighting up the moon there, but with Jupiter so close to the sun, we refer to that as a cazimi, where Jupiter's influence is really heightened, but it's also infused into that solar light that is shining on that moon. And so it's likely that the recognition, the visibility that you are receiving is going to be very positive. It's going to be something that you really like to receive. And it's right next to Pluto in the 11th house, which again can speak to like clients or colleagues that are in a position to be able to help you out a lot, that themselves, they may have a lot of influence. So that can be absolutely wonderful. One thing I would recommend with this is avoiding drama in any sort of collaborations or round recognition or visibility that you're getting, or like the passion that you are pouring into projects. If there's envy, which could absolutely be the case with this opposition here coming to you, I would just say, let it be what it is. Maybe try your best not to get involved with that so that you kind of don't get tarred by that. Yes, people may be somewhat jealous. They may be envious, especially if you're familiar with tarot. But if you can avoid getting into any sort of gossip or things like that, especially in the workplace, I think that would be the best way to go about this. Focus on the impression that you're making on those that are able to help you out and not those that would seek to undermine you. However, what's interesting about that is that, for instance, if that is the case, one of the things that that would be speaking to is like people kind of coming out of the shadows when it comes to who's on your side and who's not, right? So who's going to be supportive of you and who's not. People are being very envious, jealous, maybe not saying the nicest things to you or about you. That can be really helpful just to know, so that could wind up causing you to wind up reevaluating some of the social circles that you are engaged in, or some of who you talk to, or who you share your dreams, your aspirations, your pleasures and joys with. Those who do support your growth and your expression, those who are very responsive to your expression, they're likely to be very apparent during this time as well. So the dividing lines there may actually be quite helpful in that they're making it clear who you can rely upon and who you can't. Additionally, if there's drama that's not directly involving you through this time, you may also want to see if you can kind of sidestep that and try to avoid getting involved. This is it. It's pretty powerful energies on both sides. And so aligning with one or the other isn't necessarily going to guarantee like getting the upper hand. So probably best to not make a wager on one or the other. That said, this is so wonderful for expression, for creativity, for loving what you do. And that really making that kind of strong impression on people. So it's about the fact that you're pouring your heart into things. It's about you loving what you do. It's about you supporting those around you, taking people under your wing, celebrating the achievements of yourself, but also of other people. That's what's likely to give you the best results from this. And especially because this is a place of aspiration, you may find that you are wrapping up something that you had set out to complete, and you may be able to take a huge amount of pride in that. You may be really excited about that, again, celebrating those achievements, but this could even be then opening the door or raising this question for you of what's next. And that could even wind up representing some of the turning point here is maybe I want to pivot in this other direction and accomplish this next. And not all of this, it doesn't have to be within a career. It can be on a community level or a creative level. These could be passion projects. It could be your children that you're working with. So like helping to develop your children, your loved ones, supporting them as well, celebrating those relationships, celebrating the joy, the connection that you are able to experience with them as well. Now, that moon and Pluto in Aquarius in the 11th house, that does encourage also staying realistic. So not getting too out ahead of your skis of what your commitments are going to be, what you're going to accomplish next. I would say try and take the next step, maybe a couple steps. But one thing with these two is that they may really stir up that moon and really get it hyped up on, why don't you just skip all these steps and go for the gold, right? Let's make sure that all of the training is done before you wind up going for the gold here. But yeah, there should be a huge amount of optimism here. It should feel like your heart is really in it when it comes to your goals, your aspirations. Like the path is pretty clear as well. Like you know how to gain some traction, how to move forward. And what I would finally say about this is that with the way that everything here is getting lined up, a lot of this is really going to be highlighting your expression and how you express yourself with other people. So confidence and not feeling inhibited about how you express yourself to others, how you represent yourself, the roles that you're willing to play, your ideas, being willing to share those, not shying away from that, not playing small. I think that's going to be a big factor here. And that may be part of what this big breakthrough is around, is being willing to kind of step up and say, this is what I want for myself. This is what I love. This is what I want to go after. And so I'm going to do that. Letting people fall into supportive roles or not so much, maybe focusing a little bit less on the not so much people, really cultivating those friendships, communities that are supportive of you, and leaning way into what you love during this time. That's really what's getting called for. So yeah, these are really wonderful alignments. Following your heart is really going to open a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities for you with this opposition here. So yeah, I do hope that it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Taurus, we have the full moon in Aquarius taking place in your 10th house. So this is the place of your public roles, your public image, your public life, generally speaking. So if you have a traditional career path, often this is going to speak to that, but it can also speak to the mark that you want to make on the world, your ambitions, what you're trying to accomplish. So if I speak of it in terms of career a little bit much and you don't have a traditional career path, just feel free to extrapolate to any sort of leadership positions or public roles that you play, ambitions that you have. So this is likely to be something of a culmination point around that. This could be milestones. This could be completions, like bringing a project to completion, starting a new one. It could be a turning point or like a pivot point within a project that you're working on or a career path that you are following or a job that you're holding. This is likely to include quite a bit of public recognition. That is a full moon, so it's fully visible. And it's very likely that your impact publicly is going to be recognized, highly visible. Now, that can be a bit of a double-edged sword. This does mean that what you're doing is unlikely to kind of go unseen. So definitely great to act with a lot of integrity when it comes to your public life. Try not to cut any corners at the end of July into the beginning of August. But what's great about it is that it's receiving the full illumination of the sun because it's a full moon. But Jupiter is also here almost exactly conjunct to the sun. So we refer to this as Jupiter's cazimi, which is to say it's in the heart of the sun. The light of Jupiter and the light of the sun are blended together. And so the qualities of that planet are heightened, but they're also kind of infused into the solar light. So it's not just that this is a full moon, it's a full moon that is in some sense illuminated by Jupiter as well. So that is likely to bring a lot of expansion, a lot of benefit, a lot of a sense of good luck or good timing, a sense of order, support, harmony, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, goodwill. And so that light is coming from the 4th house, which can have to do with your inner self. So this could be you really pouring your heart into your work and getting a lot of recognition for it. That is something I would really encourage. If there's a project that you're working on, really try and pour yourself into it. This may also require a little bit of work-life balance here. But if you are highly motivated to accomplish something, to make a mark, you could do this in such a wonderful way if you are really able to focus quite a bit on that accomplishment. However, you may also see this as the 4th house. It's your inner self, it's your emotional self, but it's also your home and your family. So your impact publicly can benefit a huge amount from things going well within your home or your family. So this could be family support for the impact that you're making, family support for your career, your path. Maybe this is a work-life balance where family is stepping up around the home in order to support your ability to focus up on accomplishing something out in the world as well. That would not surprise me at all with this. Your sense of being able to go home and kind of relax and be optimistic and be cheerful is also going to be very supportive of your accomplishments, of your ambitions during this period of time. Especially if you're able to like go home and then feel excited about what you're able to do the next day. Maintain that sense of momentum even as you're able to relax. Additionally, what's interesting about Jupiter and the sun in your fourth house is this is likely to bring a lot of attention to your own internal goodwill. So how do you basically comport yourself publicly? A lot of that is really rooted in how we're doing internally at our root. And so if you are really compassionate, kind, considerate of others, that's likely to show up in how you're impacting people. So for instance, taking people under your wing. Maybe this is that you're able to guide your children really well. It could be that you are able to guide those that you're working with well, especially if they have less experience. You can really show up as a leader by wanting to help other people out as well, and not just receive recognition for what you're doing, but also to genuinely support and uplift other people around you. That's going to give you a really excellent result. But as I mentioned, there may be a little bit of an imbalance here. And I would expect for that to look like there's too much that you're excited about on both sides of this equation. So this could be something that you're really excited about on the family front or on the home front or internally. This could just be when you're going home, you're having a great time by yourself, right? But that you're also really focused on your ambitions and accomplishing your goals. Maybe there's specifically a promotion or a raise that you're after. Maybe there's a project that you really want to be put on. If you work for yourself, this could be very ambitious about leveling up. And that may feel like you are spread a bit too thin. So you may need to renegotiate. I would look at like, can you write this down? Can you try and figure out what your priorities are going to be day to day? And then be as realistic as you can about what you're able to accomplish in a given day without overexhausting yourself, without stretching yourself so thin that you start to dampen the optimism or the excitement of things. Again, if there's a leadership opportunity or a project or something that you are getting put on, I would talk to family about that. Maybe see if you can renegotiate with them as well of what is expected of you on the family front. You're very likely to get support there. Finally, other than all of this, what I would expect for this to come through as on kind of a more abstract level is a sense of internal clarity about why your goals and your ambitions are what they are, why you want to accomplish these things. So the meaning, the why behind what you're doing out in the world should feel very clear, which can help immensely with making sure that your motivation and your momentum is clean and that it is sustainable as well. And so that could also really be underpinning a lot of progress that you're making through this period of time. But yeah, I think that that is a lot of what I have for you, Taurus. It looks really great. If you are after a promotion or something like that, pour your heart into it. You're very likely to get the recognition that's going to see you receiving that. So I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Gemini, we have the full moon in Aquarius taking place in your ninth house. So this is a place of your personal expansion, the expansion of your horizons and your life experience, either internally through wisdom, knowledge, beliefs, understanding, study, or on a physical level through travel and exploring unfamiliar territory. This can also be a place of legal considerations, publishing as well, dissemination of your ideas, generally speaking. On a very literal level, often travel and higher education show up in this place. So you're likely to see something of a culmination around these things. So this could be some big trip that you need to make that you've been planning for. This could be tapping really deeply into like, what do you believe about different things? Maybe even shedding some unnecessary beliefs that you have held, some tradition maybe that you've been following. This could be through discovering something new, like as something of a pivot point or a breakthrough, understanding that, oh, I kind of align with this belief system a little bit more strongly, or even feeling free to not align whatsoever when it comes to belief systems or ideologies or things like that. Feeling freer to like liberate yourself from needing to follow a restrictive kind of tradition or viewpoint that's already established, and really freeing yourself up to believe what you truly believe, to dig into that, to study for that. This could also be a culmination point around educational matters, around legal matters. So you could see that there's a pivot point within a lawsuit if you were involved in something like that. Additionally, there may be either a publishing opportunity, like completing something that you've been working on, like a book, or this could also be publishing like videos or podcasts, or public speaking as well could wind up showing up here. And there may be something that you're needing to present. That should go over incredibly well. It looks to me like the planets are really supporting you in that. So what's really wonderful about this, and the reason that I say that, is that not only is that full moon, of course, getting lit up by the light of the sun, but we also have a Jupiter cazimi going on under this full moon. And so what that does is it heightens the influence of Jupiter in this moment, but it also then infuses this Jupiterian quality into the solar light. So not only is that moon getting lit up by the sun, but essentially also by Jupiter. And what Jupiter represents, what's getting heightened and infused into this full moon, is benefit, is good luck. It is fortunate. It is very supportive. It's very harmonizing. There's a lot of knowledge and expansion in Jupiter that it winds up bringing to situations that it's infusing into that moon. There's a lot of goodwill with it as well. And so it's also quite prolific. So again, if you've had like a creative block around something that you're writing with the intention of publishing it, you may feel like that restriction is really released and that you're able to make a lot of progress again. But this also, the third house where this Jupiter cazimi is, which is highlighting this full moon in the ninth house, this has to do with your ideas, your opinions, your comfort zone, so the familiar territory, your community, writing, communications, conversations, things like that. So knowledge, understanding, ideas, mind, winds up showing up in both of these houses, but just in slightly different ways. And so basically what we see is that there's something that's coming from your conscious mind or from your community that is pushing you toward greater expansion, toward greater life experience through a sense of culmination or breakthrough or turning point here. So this could be feeling somewhat less inhibited when it comes to sharing your ideas or your knowledge about things. This could be like a teaching opportunity even. It could be, though, even like a study opportunity, like deciding finally to pursue some kind of a degree or a course or something like this as well. But when it comes to publishing or public speaking or that, which I was just talking about, the sun and that Jupiter cazimi in your third house could also be the reception of other people being very supportive, or your voice being very strong and coming off quite well. So again, I think that any sort of presentations that you need to make here are very, very, very well supported by these alignments. And you may find that there are some opportunities that are opening up to you through conversations, through writing, connecting, communications. So try not to be at all shy about speaking up here, because it's likely that it's actually going to wind up paying off quite a bit and opening doors for personal growth. So while you are sharing your knowledge here, while you are doing so confidently, hopefully, try also again to remain open to learning. So this isn't just about projecting your own ideas or your own knowledge to other people. It is also about staying receptive in your higher mind. So understanding that new information is always potentially available, and it can always wind up helping you in your worldview, in your perspective, that your perspective can always expand, that you can always learn. And that's going to help you to be in the best position, of course, to have very relatable ideas that make an impact, is having as expansive or as thorough an understanding of things as possible. And we can only do that by staying open to learning. But yeah, with that said, your voice, your ideas are likely to have a lot more influence than usual here. So I would recommend taking advantage of that if you are in the position to do so. Try to really be authentic. Try to be yourself. Try not to be too shy about that. There's likely to be this energy of expansion to your community and the people that you're connecting with, and a lot of receptivity with that as well over the coming year, really. And this is one of those big moments that's going to be kind of kicking that off. Finally, again, any trips, any travel that are available to you, I would really recommend that as well. You may find yourself in something of a debate or an argument. There may be a little bit of drama over beliefs or ideas. I would recommend maybe try and steer clear of that to the extent that feels reasonable. Of course, if this is a banner that you're really wanting to wave, this is something that you really believe in and understand, then I would say you're probably in a position to be able to make a really great impression, and you may actually be able to make an impact by sharing those ideas, sharing your knowledge on different topics, sharing your perspective. I would really encourage that, but that may wind up becoming kind of a distraction if it winds up being kind of an across the board debating everyone kind of a thing, you know? The reason I say that is that the opposition between Jupiter and Pluto across the third and ninth axis could definitely put you in some arguments around ideologies, beliefs, notions of what's possible, etc. So pick your battles, basically, is what I'm getting at there. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Gemini. It looks very nice, very exciting. So I hope it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right. So for Cancer, the full moon in Aquarius is going to be taking place in your eighth house. And this is the place of shared resources, of investments, of debts, dependencies. This can also, on a literal level, occasionally speak to matters of death. So will and inheritances can also wind up showing up here. Often it doesn't speak directly to that, so I don't want to worry you about that, but I will just kind of throw that out there. So this is going to bring a sense of culmination or a turning point or a sense of completion, turning a page when it comes to shared resources, debts, emotional bonds, dependencies, investments, taxes, financial resources overall. So if you do share your finances with someone, if you are partnered up, like you're married, or if you are in a business partnership, this is likely to speak to a major change when it comes to resources in that relationship. So this could look like a partner getting a raise, a bonus, an investment opportunity, a divestment opportunity as well could just equally show up here. Also, then when it comes to personal debts, this can be an opportunity to reach a turning point or a tipping point when it comes to that. So you may be paying something off fully or really getting determined to do so, figuring out how you're going to do that. It could point to a loan that you'll need to be taking on. If that's the case, I would make sure that you're very clear on the terms of that, mostly because Pluto is also up here. So it can feel like there's a little bit of imposition when it comes to that. So I would hope that there would not be an imposition of terms that you weren't fully clear on. So make sure that you read everything for sure. But this can also be not literal. It can also very much speak to how are we emotionally bonded to someone? Are we dependent on people? What is our attachment style when it comes to people? Do we trust others? Do we share of ourselves with others? To what extent? How much do we hold back when it comes to that? Probably due to past experiences. That's usually where any sort of trust issues or holding back winds up coming up there. So this gives you an opportunity to really dig into that. There may be something of a culmination point. There may be something of like a relationship reaching a tipping point where you are either going to have to commit and open yourself up and trust again. Or it could be, you know what, this is reaching a point, I just don't have that trust there. Maybe this is, again, a divestment opportunity or deciding that you're kind of done with a connection. So it can absolutely show up as some of those make or break moments in a relationship around commitment in particular and attachment dependencies. Now, on a personal level, outside of an actual relationship, it can also speak to commitments conceptually. So if you do have trust issues, if you do have like a specific kind of attachment style that you may either be very or not at all comfortable with, maybe you are wanting to work on some of those things, maybe you're wanting to change some of those things, this would give you a really wonderful opportunity to do so. And what I love about this is that this isn't just a normal Aquarius full moon. Yes, it's of course opposite to the sun. It's fully illuminated by the solar light, but Jupiter is also with the sun here. This is what we call a Jupiter cazimi, or Jupiter being right at the heart of the sun. And so what this winds up doing is it winds up heightening the influence of Jupiter in all of this, but it also kind of infuses that Jupiterian energy into the solar light, which is illuminating that moon. Jupiter is very beneficial. It's very expansive. It can feel like a lot of good luck. It can feel like a major confidence boost or optimism. It tends to show up as goodwill, knowledge, harmony, understanding. And that is the Sun and Jupiter here in Leo, they're rooted in your second house, which is lovely. Especially, again, if there's any sort of trust or attachment style or bonding style kinds of issues that you're wanting to work on around this time, regardless of whether you're partnered up or not. This is speaking to a boost in your sense of self-worth. And one thing that I find with the 8th house is that it's so reflective of how the second house is doing. And in this case for you, that is so incredibly literal, but it's in a really wonderful way. So our attachment style, how much we value our commitments with others, how much we trust others, how much we share of ourselves with others, almost all of that is really rooted in how much do we trust ourselves? How much do we value ourselves? How much do we root our value of ourself deeply in ourself rather than looking for what is my value to someone else? And then that getting complicated and creating potential trust or balance issues or power issues within relationships, which of course I think most of us know can wind up becoming something of a self-fulfilling prophecy when it comes to commitments and things like this. So what is your attachment style? This is going to be shining a really wonderful light on that. And it's going to be doing so in a way that is quite self-loving. And so it should feel pretty safe. It should feel pretty good. It should clarify how you can open up to people. You can trust people. You can attach yourself to people in some way because you trust yourself more. You trust yourself to respond appropriately in any given moment in your connections with people. And so you know that if your trust is not well respected or it doesn't go over well in a specific situation, you can trust yourself to respond accordingly. And you know that you're going to be good regardless. So you can open up because you're going to be good regardless of how that winds up resulting. So if you do feel like, one thing I would say is if you haven't really dug into notions of attachment style or like the psychology of bonding with people and how we do that and how that can be impacted by our experiences, I would recommend kind of looking into that around the time of this full moon. It's likely that you're going to get some really wildly wonderful insights into that. Kind of regardless of whether you've looked into it or not, it's likely that there's going to be greater understanding here and that the light that's shown on this that creates the opportunity for a turning point with this full moon, that it's likely to be incredibly helpful, very beneficial, and coming from a place of knowing your worth with the Jupiter cazimi in your second house there. So being deeply understanding of your own emotional resilience, not only is that going to support a sense of abundance and feeling very secure materially and emotionally, but it's also likely to open the door for you to be able to trust, to be able to let your guard down when it comes to commitments with other people. If that's something that you're even wanting, which may also be something of a revelation here, is like, maybe that's just not something that you're wanting to get that deeply into, and that's fine too. Now, coming back to finances on a personal level, again, this could look like some great investment opportunities. Of course, definitely balance any sort of optimism with a lot of care. Pay attention to the terms because Pluto can sometimes represent a little bit of power being on the other side of that. So try and make sure that that's not a shadowy thing where maybe there's something that's not completely clear. Be very clear about what the terms, what the expectations are. But you may even wind up coming into some finances that may or may not be entirely expected here as well. So there could be a bonus that you weren't quite expecting that winds up coming through. There could be a settlement or something that winds up showing up as well. You may also find that there's a close tie between how you feel about yourself emotionally and, again, your abundance or your personal income, your finances. So do you hold yourself back? Is there a potential raise or a bonus that's kind of on the table for you that maybe you're not really going after? paying attention to how those two things are combined or connected as well for you, I think is going to be really helpful with this full moon. But yeah, I think that's a lot of what I want to say about that for you, Cancer. I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right. So for Leo, we have this full moon in Aquarius taking place in your seventh house. So this is all pretty straightforward. This is the house of your partnerships and relationships. Contracts can show up here. But overall, this is really going to be a full moon that is about you and how you relate to other people and who you are relating to. So this could speak to a culmination or a sense of completion or a leveling up or breakthrough, specifically within a given relationship. So this could be like a major milestone within a relationship. This could be a major shift or a change or a pivot that is showing up in the life of someone that's close to you that has an impact on your relationship as well. So maybe a little bit of like a sad example, this could be someone that's close to you that's moving away, or it could be that someone that's close to you is getting married. And so your relationship may pivot a little bit. It may adjust to this new reality. It could, though, also speak to like an engagement or a marriage or just kind of leveling up a relationship in some way. There could also be someone that's showing up in a big way, in a very meaningful way. Maybe someone that you haven't quite seen in a specific light before. What's fascinating about this full moon, what I love really about this full moon, is that it's not just a full moon that's receiving the light of the sun here, but because of this Jupiter cazimi, what we have is that Jupiter's influence is really heightened in this moment, of course, but we also see the infusion of that Jupiterian energy, that Jupiterian quality into the solar light. So it's basically like this moon is not only being fully illuminated by the sun, but also by Jupiter. And that's coming from your first house. So this is an intensity of goodwill and heart and passion of yours. This is your own personal, wonderful perspective. This is a lot of confidence on your end. So this Jupiter alignment, this is going to be here in your first house for about a year. It's going to be lifting you up. It's a wonderful alignment. I recently covered it, but this is a very important moment in that transit for you because of the fact that that Jupiter is receiving that cazimi and it's lifting up that transit overall for you. So you could have some really wonderful personal breakthroughs around your identity, around your confidence, around your visibility, your charisma, really showing up well. And what I love about this is that you are then shedding that light onto other people. So this could be a lot of confidence that you are experiencing and that you feel like you're in this wonderful position to be able to encourage others. And I would really encourage that from you of sharing of your heart and your light and your warmth to other people. It's likely to have a huge impact on them. Sometimes Pluto itself going through your seventh can speak to the impact that you're able to have on other people. But the way that this is set up, it's so amplified and it's so like there's a reception on the other side to that. Now, like I said, your own goodwill, your openness, your sense of heart and passion could be helping you to see someone else differently in a new kind of a light that's very positive as well. So there could be someone around you that's been kind of going under the radar for a while that may just kind of show up in a really powerful way for you around this time. And it may not even be totally due to something that they're doing. It may just be due to a different light that you are kind of perceiving them through here. But yeah, building other people up, I think is going to be wonderful. It's probably also going to be something that you feel is like a feedback loop or like that you are able to benefit a lot from being very kind and building other people up. But it may even just be a sense of like personal satisfaction of going home and being like, I made that person's day. That's wonderful. That's super cool. That's something that I want to do, especially if you have like Leo sun or rising. That's kind of a natural thing that you love to do anyway. So yeah, having that impact, absolutely massive. Very, very, very amplified here in terms of the wonderful influence that you can have on other people and how they see themselves and how they see their power and how they see their freedom as well, like how much they are able to do. Or especially again, with this being an Aquarius, this could be even the eccentric qualities of other people. It sometimes can make us feel like a black sheep, but you may be pointing out just how wonderful those quirky qualities in other people are, and basically giving them a permission that may stick with them for a while about, this is something I should embrace, or this is something that's kind of cool or appreciated by other people. So yeah, if you find yourself in an opportunity like that, I would really take it. And this is the word that I was looking for before. The mutual growth as well. This is likely to represent something of a feedback loop. And so feeding your energy into connections, you have a lot of the initiative here with the Sun and Jupiter on your side of this. And you may be actively choosing to connect with people. Again, for instance, maybe someone who's been flying under the radar for you for some time, that winds up becoming very mutually beneficial, or that is going to encourage a sense of mutual support and growth together. Like I said, visibility and charisma are really amplified during this time as well. So you're showing up really wonderfully here. And again, this is a really heightened special moment of Jupiter going through your first house, but this is ongoing for a year. Now, finally, what I would say about this is that there's so much on either side. This is pretty much evenly matched on both sides here. So you may feel really kind of pushed and pulled between your own goals and your sense of self and independence and where your heart is when it comes to your own personal life, versus to some extent, or maybe balanced by a lot of prioritization of your partnerships, your relationships, and how you're relating to people, the impact you're having on people, and so forth. So you may almost feel like there is an opportunity here, certainly, to bring that into balance, to kind of temper that, to hold space for yourself, but then to also be able to infuse your energy into other people and receive that excellent feedback back and so forth. But again, it is a balancing act. So it may feel like you're kind of over adjusting at times when it comes to other people's priorities and your focus on your relationships versus your focus on your own goals and things like that. Also, what perspective is really important here, especially if you feel at any point here like you and your priorities are a little bit at odds with other people. So let's say you have a different idea about how to go about something than someone else. Which way are you going to lean then? Are you going to be super compromising on that and cooperative? Or are you going to say, no, I'm going to stay in my lane here, thanks, but no thanks, kind of a thing? I can't give you an answer on that. But I would say, again, if you're able to kind of anchor yourself on the center of that and maybe offer whatever excess energy or time or effort that you may have towards someone else's perspective, try to find a happy medium, try to find that mutual agreement or mutual compromise. The reciprocity, I think, is going to be an important barometer to where you should be focusing your energy during this period of time. So yeah, look for that reciprocity. Look for people who seem to kind of suddenly be showing up in a different light. I think that's actually going to be quite important here. And I can only encourage you taking those best, wonderful Leoan qualities of yours, shining on other people, being very affirmative of other people, leaning into your confidence, your charisma, because I think that's going to go over just so well for you here. One final thing that I would say about this is going to be a little bit of a caution around this, is that the opposition between Jupiter and Pluto here, it can show up as like I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of jealousy here, or a little bit of dealing maybe with some people who have a kind of undermining quality. So rather than just being like influential people who have a really strong impact on you, sometimes Pluto can be a little underhanded. And so you may be like showing up in this wonderful way and shining a light on people, and they may be super receptive to that. There may be little, grumpy faces, that are around. And I would try your best not to feel the need to address that, because you're likely to just kind of get tarred by the situation. And this is all such wonderful alignments here. There's so much growth here. There's so much potential for proliferation of your relationships and the people that you're connected to, a deepening of those connections and things like that. There's so much that's wonderful here that I would caution around getting bogged down by any sort of conflict with others. or feeling the need to defend yourself here. Oh, and this one other little note here I actually overlooked. Yeah, you could wind up in all of this excitement over committing yourself or over promising. So this is kind of what I mean by like making sure that there's a balance here between your own goals and other people's stuff. So you, I think, are going to want to really be on board with what other people are doing. But I think that you also have a lot that's super cool that's going on for you right now as well. And there's only so many hours in the day. And so finding that balance point, finding that barometer of like, is someone going to be reciprocal toward you? That's fine. Then you're kind of evening out. Maybe you're able to balance your skills. Maybe you are able to like encourage each other and be like a moral support for each other in both of your goals. But you may wind up in a situation where you're over-promising to people who are not that receptive. So that's one, or not that reciprocal. So that's one thing that I would, again, just really preach here is keep an eye on the reciprocity before you promise your own energy and attention and effort and time into other people's priorities here. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Leo. It's super cool. Like I said, Jupiter is in your first house, so that's wonderful. It's a little difficult to go wrong when that's going on. So yeah, I hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Virgo, we have the full moon in Aquarius taking place in your sixth house. This is the place of your routines, the things you have to do, your work, your habits, your everyday life, your health, your responsibilities and obligations. So you're likely to see something of a culmination point or a turning point. You could be coming to some like completion around a project or something that you've been working on. This could even have to do with coworkers or teams that you're working on, some kind of a major pivot point. And you may find that around the time of this full moon, around the end of July, that you are really hyper focused on your working life, on getting things done, on bringing things to a sense of satisfactory result. Now, you may also wind up getting some recognition for that, or the structure of your working life may even be kind of changing around you. So say if you work for a company, this could be some changes that are going on within the company that are shifting some of your duties, that are impacting some of your coworkers or departments, things like this. So this is what I would really expect along all of those lines. You may even be focused on initiating some of these changes yourself. So this could look like streamlining or making more efficient some of the habits that you have, be it procrastination or overwork. You could even be looking at some of the tools that you're working with, wanting to upgrade those. So there's a huge amount of focus and priority on this area of your life. This could even wind up speaking to your health and your health habits, and that may become a major priority as well. Especially if you have been working a lot. Often in the sixth house, what we see is that stress or work can be impacting our health, and it can kind of force our hand to do something about that, to make a change. So that may be some of that streamlining or making things more efficient, simplifying, offloading some of your workload, working a little bit closer with teams, sharing responsibilities, things like this. Now, what's interesting about this full moon, what makes it so unique, is that what we have on the other side of it, of course, a full moon is fully illuminated by the sun, but this time around we have the sun pretty much exactly conjunct to Jupiter. So this is called a cazimi, or Jupiter being right in the heart of the sun. And this is a pretty special configuration here where the sun winds up taking on a lot of the quality of the planet that is exactly conjunct to that. Now, Jupiter is considered very beneficial. It can be highly expansive. It can bring a lot of recognition, a lot of joy, a lot of harmony, a lot of order, a lot of understanding, knowledge, luck. So that energy is what's lighting up the moon this time around. And I really like that a lot. Now, for you, that's coming from your 12th house. And so what you may find is that with a lot of these changes that are coming up, either it's offering a lot of opportunity for you to get recognition around what it is that you've been doing behind the scenes, or if you have been displaying a lot of humility and like a team ethic, this could be some personal recognition around that as well, feeling appreciated. So a lot of potential hidden support or behind the scenes opportunities, behind the scenes recognition. So the things that you're doing kind of out of sight, they're not going unrecognized. You may also find that there's just this kind of serendipity to the air when it comes to the sixth house aspects of your life as well, the responsibilities and work and health and things like this. So you may feel like things are lined up just so that you're able to benefit, so that you are able to better streamline, so that you are able to better understand your priorities and sort them out in a way that's actually going to work for you going forward. Additionally, if there's been any sort of like a health work balance issue, that wellness versus perfectionism kind of a situation that can come up with the sixth house, this is also likely to bring that to light in a very helpful way. So you're able to see where some of those issues may be and do something about that then. So this is very unlikely to just leave you in that space. Like, yes, I'm aware I'm overworking. It's impacting my health. What next? So this is likely to bring some kind of resolution around that, some help to be able to sort that out. And again, it may feel somewhat serendipitous. You may just kind of run across someone who is able to give you some advice on that, someone who's able to help you out. So I would be open to those opportunities that seem to come out of the blue. That's often how benefits from the 12th house wind up showing up. Additionally, what this speaks to is that all these 12th house topics, the wellness, the internal wellness, especially psychological, emotional, spiritual wellness, rest, healing, moments of introversion or introspection, those moments that you spend alone, that's likely to be very helpful. So I would try your best not to sleep on that. I know that it feels easier said than done to allow for rest and relaxation to rejuvenate you when it comes to your priorities and your working life. It can often feel like time-wise that these kind of fly in the face of each other, or that sometimes work stress can feel like it's impacting your ability to relax. But what I would say with this is really try to do your best to lean into that where you can. If it means canceling plans, if it means spending a little more time just by yourself with just you time, I would really recommend that with the way that this is lined up. It looks like it would be very beneficial. And that in itself could wind up helping you to prioritize that sustainable wellness over perfectionism, like not working yourself to the bone and then saying, oh, I have another moment, let me get ahead, let me push ahead. This is much less about that than it is recognizing the efforts and the results, and then taking those moments to have that breather, to just be rather than to keep doing. But yeah, other than that, I would also just say the 12th house. So the 12th house can speak to habits as well. Sometimes when we're dealing with 6th, 12th house alignments, they can speak to troubling habits or complicated habits that we have, patterns, behaviors, things that we wind up kind of leaning on as a crutch. That I would pay attention to through this time. Usually, at least subconsciously, we know what these things are within us. So I'd pay attention to those. I wouldn't say self-flagellate about any sort of complicated habits that may make things more complicated for you. But I would say there's probably a solution that this can wind up presenting to that, or a way out of it. Maybe this is like finding those alternatives and so forth. So let's say that this is scrolling, and rather than resting and relaxing on, say, your lunch break, you're scrolling. And then you come back and you're exhausted from after your break. This could be you just kind of stumbling upon some sort of substitution habit that you're able to build up. Maybe it's, watching spiritual videos or something like that. Maybe it's some hobby that you love that really lights you up. Discussing that, again, watching videos about that. This just as one example, but you know what I mean. When it comes to how we can trip ourselves up, likely you're going to get a lot of help with that around this time. So I would lean into like just being aware of that, having it on your mind, having some intention to have that addressed during this time. And it's more than likely going to meet you way more than halfway here. And finally, aside from that, this is also pretty compassionate. So you may be drawn to do some charity work or help someone out, do something compassionate for other people. I would also really lean into that. It's likely that you're going to really feel that that's rewarding for you, either spiritually or materially even. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Virgo. So I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Libra, we have the full moon in Aquarius taking place in your 5th house. So this is the place of your creativity, your self-expression, your children, that which you create in the world, your loved ones, your passions, your pleasures, what brings you joy, any sort of projects that you're working on. If you were an entrepreneur, that's going to figure into this quite a bit. So, yeah, you're likely to find that there is a lot of attention that you're focusing on your loved ones, on projects that you're working on children, on business if you are an entrepreneur. There could be something of a culmination point around this. So, if you're working on any sort of projects or there's been a big push when it comes to your business, if you've been focusing quite a bit on your children's achievements, there's likely to be a breakthrough moment here. Now, that may be something of like a pivot point or a turning point as well, where maybe you're wrapping something up or bringing something to completion. And then there's this lingering question of, okay, what's next? What are we pushing for next? What's the next aspiration? What's the next hope, the next dream that we're wanting to pursue here? What's the next level up in business? This can also have you really reinforced when it comes to your creativity, your passions. So any sort of projects that you're working on, and these can be just totally personal projects that you love. So it could be hobbies or interests that you're really into, that you maybe have been pursuing, or maybe you're getting back into, reprioritizing. And this could be like leveling up in that, focusing a lot on that, giving yourself the permission to really enjoy that, lean into that. Now, what's extra wonderful about this is that not only do we have this full moon, of course, fully illuminated by the sun, but there's also this Jupiter cazimi there, where Jupiter is so close to the sun that its own influence is really heightened in the chart. And we also then see that Jupiterian energy, that quality basically being infused into the solar light, which is lighting up the moon. So we could look at this as the moon basically not only receiving the light of the sun, but also of Jupiter. That brings a lot of benefit and goodwill, good luck, sense of expansion and support, harmony that is kind of inherent to this full moon, because that's part of the light that's being shown onto the moon. And this is coming from your 11th house, which is friendships, groups that you belong to, community, colleagues. This can be your hopes, dreams, aspirations, your willingness to reach, your willingness to state what you really want for yourself going forward. This can also really speak to your impact on others, and especially groups of other people. So when it comes to what you are wanting to accomplish creatively or around your children or around your loved ones, there's a huge amount of support for that that is coming from the outside. So you may have friends that are really encouraging to you. You may have community support, and they may be opening doors for you. So I'll give you an example. If this is like a hobby, like a creative hobby or a craft or something, someone could be saying to you, this is excellent. Why don't you go to this market or something and get like a table or whatever, and actually pursue like doing this maybe on the side. This could be like clients that are putting in a really good word for you and helping out your business if you run your own business. It could be colleagues that are bringing a lot of visibility to you as well. So you should feel deeply supported in your expression, in your creativity, very well recognized for your creativity and for what you're doing, the efforts that you're putting into whatever it is that you're passionate about working on. So there's support coming from the outside when it comes to that, not just a sense of like following your heart, but feeling like those around you are deeply supportive as well. And that can help with prioritizing the aspirations, your future plans around any sort of creative efforts, or again, your business. You should also feel during this time that like really authentic self-expression winds up opening doors for you as well. So you may be like waving your own banner in a very honest way, just being yourself, showing up as you feel stirred to show up in any given moment. And you may find that people are really connecting with that, and that the response to that may be better than you've expected. If you are kind of shy or you don't want to step on people's toes, if you kind of hold yourself back to some extent, you may find that people are responding in a way that you would not have expected to you just being really authentic. And that can be deeply freeing. That can be deeply uninhibiting and really affirming of you and who you are and your own personal expansion and growth. Your sense of being able to rely on the fact that your true self is very well liked and appreciated by other people. And so not feeling the need to wear a mask or a persona in order to win people over, but knowing that you can do that just by showing up. Other than that, I would just say if you do have children, this could very much look like them getting some sort of recognition, achievement, award as well, and you feeling really excited about that. Maybe even you getting recognition for the good job that you have done with them. The extent to which you are able to take others under your wing or vice versa is also incredibly well supported here. Friendships, a sense of community, socializing, events. I would be saying yes to those things as much as you can because it looks like this is very excellent for that. And yeah, finally, other than all of that, there could be a little bit of drama that gets stirred up in groups that you belong to or with friends. Try your best, I would say, to like not get too terribly involved in that. Also, if there's a little bit of jealousy from other people around recognition that you're receiving, I would just maybe try not to get overly involved in that either, even if it is to like assuage that or to build them up. That can get stirred up in a kind of weird way when we're dealing with an opposition between Jupiter and Pluto, and there's such evenly matched kinds of energies to deal with that it's just difficult to know like exactly how that would wind up shaking out. So better in this really wonderful moment to just try your best to not look at those kinds of things. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra. So I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Scorpio, we have the full moon in Aquarius taking place in your fourth house. So, this is the place of your emotional foundation, your emotional roots, your internal state, but also your home and your family, your past as well. So, you're likely to see something of a culmination or a turning point around this area of your life. This could be on a very literal level. This could be someone moving in or out. This could be a move that is either in the works or it's coming up or you're actually making a move during this time. So changes to do with your living arrangements or projects around your home, changes, upgrades, improvements that you're wanting to do. This could represent a turning point when it comes to that as well. Also, when it comes to family. So this could be additions to the family or feeling like there's a culmination or a turning point with your family relationships. So you may be kind of prioritizing that area of your life. You may be focused quite strongly on your family life, on things that are going on with them. Maybe they are going through something and need some support. Maybe you are. Maybe there's a conversation that needs to be had around a role that you are needing to have shift or change. But there's a huge amount of focus and a lot of light shown on this area. And there may need to be some conversation or renegotiation in this area as well. Now, what's interesting about all of this is that this isn't just a regular full moon in Aquarius, because what we have here is that, of course, the sun is up in Leo, opposite to it. It is fully illuminating that moon, so it's bringing a lot of light. That's the light that's being shown on this area of life. But we have Jupiter almost exactly conjunct to that sun, and that's referred to as a Jupiter cazimi, which is to say it's right in the heart of the sun. And so the light of Jupiter and the light of the sun are kind of blended together. Now, that does heighten the impact of that planet, but it also kind of infuses a lot of the quality of that planet into the solar light, which is illuminating the moon. So we could kind of look at this moon as lit up by both the sun and Jupiter right now, which is lovely. Jupiter tends to be very beneficial. It can bring a sense of expansion, of good luck, of good timing, fortunate circumstances, optimism, excitement, momentum, recognition, sense of order and harmony, knowledge, understanding. And so where that is showing up is in your 10th house. So this is the place of your public life, opposite to the place of your private life. So this is where, for instance, if you have a traditional career path, this would probably look like your career, but it's whatever public roles you wind up playing, as well as ambitions, accomplishments that you're setting out to do, mark that you're wanting to make on the world, basically, what you're wanting to grow into. So there's a lot of benefit. There's a lot of really wonderful energy up there for you. And this could be speaking to some career opportunities or public recognition that's available to you. Now, that may be part of why you're needing to renegotiate some of your home or family roles or how that's going to look. Or that could be something that is helping you with your home situation. So let's say you wanted to do literally an upgrade when it comes to your living arrangements, like a move. If there's a promotion in the offing for you, if you are getting a lot of recognition at work, that could be opening a door for you to be able to make that move. It could be benefiting your family immensely to be able to really have an impact in your public life such that you are able to open those doors to promotions and raises and all these things that help you with your family and emotional and physical security. Now, I would hope that there's a good feedback loop here, that your family situation is able to benefit your long-term success, but this definitely looks like your long-term success benefiting your family and your foundation, your home life, your private life. So at the very least, your private life is benefiting from your public life. But again, I would say if you can negotiate that, if you do have like a family and other people that are involved in this, work-life balance is likely to figure into this. So if you're able to get your family on board with helping you out with that, I think that would be really wonderful. It would help you to take full advantage of having the Sun and Jupiter up in your 10th house. But again, if this is something you're doing on your own, certainly you can manage that kind of renegotiation yourself of maybe making those upgrades to your living situation that make it more restful, that make it able to reinvigorate you for the day so that you are able to pour your heart into your work and make that great impression. But ultimately, I would pay attention to that balance. So are you pouring a little bit too much into both? See if you can prioritize, see if you can make that a little bit more sustainable around this time. Because yes, there's likely to be a lot that's super exciting going on here, but this can also be very helpful to making sure that that's sustainable. So you both have like the great things, but also the opportunity to improve upon this or to bring it into greater balance. So I would recommend basically taking advantage of both of those benefits here. Finally, other than all of that, we do also have in the coming couple of years, I just discussed this in the last video, but the nodal axis, so the north node and the south node, these are the eclipsing points, and those are moving into these houses into like 2028 as well. So the eclipses are starting to get stirred up here. This one isn't an eclipse. But going forward, you're going to have a couple years where you do keep getting eclipses along these lines. And if you are getting some glimmers of, oh, am I going to get a promotion and maybe have to move? Or is my partner or a family member going to get a promotion and therefore we have to move? Something like this, I would kind of expect that that's going to be a yes. You're likely to see a huge amount of change in the coming couple of years along all of these lines. And this full moon itself may offer a very good omen about how that's going to wind up going. An opportunity to set yourself up very well for those changes that are going to be even bigger in the coming couple of years. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Scorpio. It's very exciting. I do hope that it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Sagittarius, we have the full moon in Aquarius taking place in your third house. So this is a place of your community, the people, places, things around you, your voice, your verbal expression, especially your ideas. This can also be a place of learning and teaching, curiosity. So I would really expect that there's going to be a lot of focus on this, a lot of potential opportunities to explore your community, to talk to a lot of different people. You may find that there's a lot of different conversations, documents, emails, things like that that you're dealing with during this time. But I also would really pay attention to any sort of important documents or agreements or things that are coming in. Try not to overlook those. That said, and with this conversation, the communications that you're likely to have with other people, there's going to be such wonderful information that's coming to you. So what's happening here is not only is this a full moon in this place of your communication and learning and your mind, your conscious mind, but it is receiving the light of the sun, which is also infused with Jupiter. So there's this Jupiter cazimi here, which not only heightens the influence of Jupiter over the whole chart, but it also infuses the quality of Jupiter into the solar light. So this moon, it's getting lit up by solar light, which is infused with Jupiterian energy, which is so nice. Jupiter has a lot to do with benefits. It has to do with expansion. It has to do with knowledge, harmony, understanding, good luck, good timing, opportunities, growth. So again, it's really wonderful. And the third ninth house axis is really fascinating for the application of theory, basically. So how do you expand your perspective, your understanding of the world, of your place within it, of the potential for growth for you in your own life, what's available to you? How do you make that a reality? That's what we do in the third house. So we draw down this kind of spiritualized or philosophized, basically, kind of energy from the ninth house of this is what's possible. down into reality in the third house. So this could look like spiritual practice that's becoming very important to you, that could be incredibly inspiring to you, that could really wind up opening a lot of doors. So, for instance, some just examples here that I could see, like if there's a meditation class or a yoga class or something like that that you've been interested in getting involved with in your community, I would really recommend it here. Also, any sort of, again, spiritual practice that you've been wanting to pursue, energy work, dream interpretation, divination, anything like that, I would really be getting into those things if you feel inspired to do so at all, because this is just so wonderfully set up for that. And it could have a really powerful impact on your conscious mind as well. You may even find that there's something of a breakthrough there. So if you have struggled to some extent with maybe meditation before, I wouldn't be shy to try it again, because it's more likely to wind up really sticking with you. That said, also try and stay really open to the opportunities that are availing themselves to you, that you just kind of seem to be running into, especially around travel, courses. If there are teaching or learning opportunities, those look very well situated in this time. So if they're showing up, I would say that this would be a time to say yes to those kinds of things. Conversations that are very dynamic that themselves may be about like philosophical theories or spiritual theories about how the world works, and what does that look like on a more pragmatic level when you actually apply that to the world? How does that wind up playing out? Is it realistic? You may get into some fascinating conversations along those lines, and it doesn't even just have to be spiritual or philosophical. It could even be like business theory. Like if this is in a workplace setting, oh, this is going to be how we're going to do things. Well, how does that work in reality? You may need to negotiate that. You may need to figure that out together. And I would say those are likely to be pretty impassioned conversations. Now, it could turn into a little bit of argumentation. So I would try to see if you can pull it back from that brink. But even if you do get into, say, a philosophical or a spiritual or a political debate with someone, I would say you're likely to learn a lot through that process. And you're also likely to shed a lot of wisdom on others in that process. What I would say, though, is that when Jupiter and Pluto get worked up against each other, as they are in that opposition, it may shut down to some extent the openness to different perspectives. So try and stay open to other people's ideas. If it feels like it's a challenge to you, maybe even dig into why is that? And you may wind up being able to better understand yourself and grow through understanding what different ideas do you not like and why. Not to say that all are created equal there, some are pretty vile, not everyone's ideas are great. And that in and of itself could just be an explanation. But if there is something that rubs you a little bit weird, you may want to think about that a bit. You may want to figure out, what does that say about your own ideas? It may be saying something about your own ideas and ideals that's great, but maybe that perspective can just kind of jostle your own perspective on your own mind and consciousness in a way that itself is quite informative to you, or that helps you to understand yourself more deeply. But yeah, with this, I would finally say just stay open to your curiosity. So it's kind of any opportunities across the board, because this light is coming from this house of opportunity, especially like serendipitous things that can wind up playing out, or like spiritual opportunities. There's a lot of potential for expansion that is almost meeting you where you're at here, with the way that this energy is kind of infusing this full moon in the third house. But this just needs to stay receptive is all, which is great because the full moon usually is quite receptive. So stay open to that curiosity, follow those threads where they wind up leading you. And you should find that this is a period of time where you're able to liberate yourself from certain constraints around what you think is possible for you, and able to open a lot of doors as well to a greater sense of life experience and a greater sense of who you are and the mark that you're able to make on the world. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Sagittarius. So I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Capricorn, the full moon in Aquarius is taking place in your second house, and this is the place of your personal resources. So this can be literally your material life, your finances, your income, the things that you own, any sort of properties or assets, investments, but also your sense of self-worth, your values, what you value, the value that you bring to the table as well. So it's your personal resources basically across the board there. So you're likely to find that this is something of a culmination point. Maybe there's a sense of completion or a leveling up or a turning point when it comes to your finances. This could look like a promotion, a raise, a bonus, a settlement. It could also, though, look like addressing or reassessing your spending habits, your budgets, your long-term financial plans. So I would set some intentions around that, around having a sense of clarity about how you should be utilizing your resources such that you're able to get the most benefit out of them. Now, this is, of course, a full moon, so it's also going to be lighting up this area of your sense of worth. So you should be very attuned to that, very tapped into, again, what it is that you're bringing to the table for others, but also for yourself, what you really value, what's worthwhile for you, what is a priority for you, what's beneficial to you, what feels to you like a resource that's available. It may even bring out your resourcefulness. So again, when it comes to budgeting and figuring out financial plans, that would make a lot of sense too. What I love about this the most, though, and what makes this a very abnormally lovely full moon here is that, of course, it's fully illuminated by the sun, but the sun is in a very close conjunction with Jupiter, such that this is actually called a Jupiter cazimi, or Jupiter being right at the heart of the sun. And what this winds up doing is it winds up increasing or lifting up the energy of Jupiter. It highlights Jupiter itself, but it also winds up infusing that quality into the solar light as well. So we could look at this moon basically as not just being lit up by solar light, but also by Jupiter's light. And Jupiter is very beneficial. It can feel like a lot of good luck, good fortune, goodwill. It can give us great timing. It can bring in a lot of opportunities and expansion, sense of knowledge and order and harmony as well. So it's an excellent omen that that's what's lighting up this moon. And that I love in particular because it's coming from your 8th house, which opposite to the place of personal resources is kind of considered other people's resources or resources that you're tapped into almost by accident or through your connections to other people. This can also be a place of death, and it does speak to like the resources that we sometimes receive out of that as a thing. So this could look like an inheritance. Doesn't have to be that. It can be a settlement. Insurance tends to show up here as well. Bonuses, again. So there's some sort of finance that looks like it's coming in a very beneficial way for you. It may not be, this aspect of this may not specifically be like a raise. It could be a one-off thing, but it could still be incredibly beneficial to you. So for instance, like if you have investments, that could look like something paying off or something rising in value. Or again, a settlement, an insurance payout. This could also look like if you are married, this also, the 8th house tends to show up as the partner's income. That could be a raise or a promotion or a bonus that a partner is getting and that you are therefore receiving a lot of benefit from as well. Additionally, if you are in business for yourself, this is wonderful. This would probably look like quite a bit of clientele, making a really wonderful impression with the value that you are bringing to the table and then having that reflected back to you. Now, aside from finances, if we look at this quite a bit more abstractly or on an emotional kind of a level, the 8th house also has to do with attachments to others, bonds to others, trust and sharing with others, also on an emotional level. So yes, this can have to do with like having honest conversations about money, but also notions of like energetic reciprocity. Do you feel like your relationships, your commitments, your bonds with others are balanced? Do you feel like you are benefiting from them and others, the other party is benefiting from that as well? Having a lot of honesty there, being really open, bringing light to this area of your life and engaging with that light is likely to strengthen those connections. I would say that kind of the quote unquote worst way that I could read this, still extremely beneficial. Sometimes Jupiter helping out, for instance, in the 8th house, can look like it pointing out a problem. So again, for instance, if you have a connection to someone that you feel is not reciprocal, you may actually become aware of that around this time. You may be wonderful about, let's have an honest conversation about this. Let's talk about this and sort it out. Bring it into balance. If they are not holding up their end of that, this could clarify to you, point that out. if there is a financial imbalance there and you are assuming that there's going to be a willingness to address that and then there's not, it could actually be of emotional and energetic and even material benefit to you to bring something like that to a culmination point, maybe to a completion point, maybe to release a connection. And that's kind of my worst read on this, though. Otherwise, it looks really good. It looks like there's probably some kind of financial benefit that's coming out of this, either through a sense of leveling up or through a sense of completion. Finally, you may also find that your resources or that your sense of worth, that your self-esteem even, is being benefited from the generosity of others. So this could look like a good friend or a partner or, again, a client saying something wonderful and really lifting you up. Maybe there's a client that maybe this is like word of mouth that's opening doors for you. Or again, it could be a partner saying that there's this and this and this that you do that's wonderful, and that showing you that light, that kindness, that goodwill shining to you, illuminating your value, maybe to something that you were kind of having in a blind spot. Maybe you weren't aware that this is a value that you hold, that you provide, that you offer to the world. And that could be being pointed out to you in a very kind and generous way as well. So yeah, I would expect generosity here overall. Your connections with other people are likely to be, again, overall incredibly supported by this. And anything that comes to light around your connections to people should ultimately be very beneficial regardless of how it reflects on that specific connection. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn. So I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Aquarius, we have the full moon in Aquarius in your first house. So this is the house of you, yourself, your own goals, your priorities, your sense of identity, the roles that you play, your self-image. So it's really all about you here, and you're likely to see something of a culmination around those factors of you. So again, your sense of identity, what you attach yourself to, how you see yourself, what your goals are, what you're working on, what you're prioritizing. And that culmination may feel like a completion. It may feel like you are able to have a breakthrough or pivot point or a personal milestone here that allows for you to kind of free yourself from anything that may have felt somewhat confining or constraining, any sort of inhibitions that you may have carried. Pluto's been going through your first house recently, and on the front end of that, as it's first moving in, it can feel quite imposing. It can feel like there's a lot of weight on you. It can feel like what you're doing is really important and you want to do it really well and all of this. And so we can wind up taking things super seriously, especially again on the front end of that Pluto transit. And this full moon on that Pluto, for one thing, it may help to point that out to you where you may be kind of taking things a little more seriously than you need to, but it's also very likely to be lighting that up as the power, the impact that you're able to have just really being authentically yourself, which is something that Aquarius can do very well. So this is really emphasizing that and highlighting that. Don't be shy to pivot here. Don't be shy to let go of outdated versions of yourself or old goals, old priorities, things that you cared about. You don't need to forever care about those things, right? So if you do want to free yourself up from some older concerns or considerations, I wouldn't be shy to do that here. This is likely to bring a lot of your attention to your goals. So what are you trying to accomplish right now? What is your focus? Who do you feel like you are? And how do you feel like you're showing up in your life? That's going to be really important. And you're probably going to be thinking about that even kind of on a conceptual level as well, like trying to sort out what is like my 5-year goal here? Like, what do I want to be accomplishing? Where am I at and where am I wanting to get? And maybe even how can you kind of infuse this moment with where you're trying to get already? You know, so not feeling that constraint of, well, I'm not there yet, so I can't embody that. Well, sometimes that can be a fast track to getting there. It's just by embodying, where do you want to get to? Who do you want to be down the road? A lot of times we can just kind of step into that. Now, what I absolutely adore about this full moon, and what's really cool about the fact that you get to have this one in your first house, is that it's not just getting lit up by the solar light. as happens with the full moon, that it's fully illuminated by the sun's light. But we also have this Jupiter cazimi. So that is really emphasizing Jupiter's energy. It's heightening Jupiter's impact basically on the whole chart or the sky in this moment. But it's also infusing that Jupiterian quality into the solar light. So it's kind of like that moon is getting lit up, not just by the sun, but also by Jupiter here. And so this is out in your 7th house of other people, your relationships, your partnerships, and how you relate to others. And so it's very likely that you're going to feel like there's a lot of support for you during this time, like the impact that you're having on people, it's getting received well. You may even be getting some really wonderful insights from people. Like you may be dealing with some movers and shakers that are very open to encouraging you or opening doors for you, providing opportunities for you, that you may have felt somewhat constrained from, or like, am I ready for that yet? Or could I have an opportunity for this? I would say yes to those things because it's very unlikely that this would be being presented to you if you were not already at that level. So yeah, I would be saying yes to a lot of the things that people are presenting to you here. Yes, you may feel a little bit of fear with that Pluto in your own 1st house, but this is a lot of goodwill that's coming from the outside toward you. And so I would recommend trusting it when we're dealing with a Jupiter cazimi. This could show up as a relationship, like even a romantic interest could show up. It could be a good friend, either that you already know, or it could be even someone new that's suddenly showing up for you. This could be clients that are putting in a great word for you or making some encouragement about, hey, why don't you grow in this way or that? And maybe it's something that you thought was down the road. And like I was saying, even about new versions of yourself or embodying, where you're wanting to be, maybe you're already there. And you just kind of need to embrace it. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are some people who are saying that to you during this period of time. So yeah, you're likely to receive a lot of great energy from the outside, doors opening for you. There could even be someone saying like, hey, do you want to go in on this partnership together? So business partnerships can wind up showing up here as well. But yeah, I think that you and your authentic self, especially when you're really leaning into that, is likely to get a lot of encouragement, a lot of kind words, even just from regular like people that you are running into as well. So I would really recommend embracing authenticity, a lot of confidence. Take the compliments that you're receiving seriously during this time. I don't think that it's just said flippantly with the Jupiter cazimi out there reflecting into that moon. People mean what they're saying with this alignment here. So try to receive that. Try to embrace the confidence that you're going to be getting from the outside here. Try to follow your heart as well when it comes to who is showing up in your life. And one final thing that I would say with this is we do have this Jupiter-Pluto opposition here, and that can be a bit of a conflagration. And so one thing I would say is that if, for instance, someone is showing up really well and they're getting a lot of your attention and they are embodying something that you want to be, I would try to let that light a fire under you, even if this is like someone you don't know. This could just be like, oh man, I wish I had that. There's a couple different ways that we could do that. We can let that create some envy or a jealousy in ourselves, or we can let that inspire ourselves of if someone else can have that, I can have that. If someone else can embody that, I can embody that. If they can pull that off, I can pull that off. So if you do find yourself really looking to someone and lit up by them, but then also feeling like you're shrinking from it a little bit, I would take that seriously. And I would try to see if you can get yourself into that notion of receiving that as an inspiration from the outside of like, if you do get a little bit envious, that is an indication that that is something that you might want to grow toward, so you could wind up getting some really great insights from the outside, also just in how people are showing up and how that is stirring you. Now, aside from that, this could also be like a conflagration with a partner. I would try not to let any sort of disagreements with a partner snowball. There's so much opportunity here to sidestep that. So for instance, if someone says something that you kind of want to push back on, I wouldn't say that you can't, but I would maybe even take a little bit more seriously. Why do you want to push back on that? Or like, what is it about what they're saying that you truly disagree with? Digging into that a little bit more. Pluto's really good at like digging into any sort of subconscious feelings or motives about things. So there may be something that you're able to resolve through encouraging them to kind of dig a little deeper into their own perspective and then doing that on your end as well. And that may even wind up resolving any sort of a disagreement in and of itself, is just by each party kind of being willing to look at why they are taking the positions that they are. That may wind up bringing a sense of balance and temperance and harmony to the situation in and of itself, rather than kind of actively going at it with each other. But yeah, I think that's a lot of what I have for you, Aquarius. So it looks super wonderful. It looks so affirming of your expression and your creativity, your confidence, your sense of identity, and a willingness to regenerate and rejuvenate and almost feel kind of reborn in this moment as a new version of yourself, something that is updating to you now in this greater sense of growth that you've experienced up until this point. Right? You're not an old version of yourself. No matter how new it is, there's always a newer version of yourself that you're growing into. So I would really recommend trying to embrace that. But yeah, I think that is a lot of what I have for you, Aquarius. So I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right. So for Pisces, we have the full moon in Aquarius taking place in your 12th house. So this is the place of the subconscious. This is the place of where you do things on your own, a place of rest, of patterns of behavior, of habits, of notions of internal well-being or lack thereof. Internal restlessness can show up here. Complicated habits can also show up here. And so there may be something that is culminating around that. You may either be becoming aware of a habit that you may not have been aware of previously. If that is the case, if something kind of washes over you of, wow, I didn't realize that I was doing that to myself, it's likely to be incredibly beneficial. It's likely to be very healing, especially any of these like subconscious patterns, say your internal dialogue or just how you perceive of things, all of the internal noise that can get stirred up. It's likely to be incredibly beneficial around this time because it can point that out and then offer a solution. Now, part of the reason that I say that is that on the other side of this, of course, we have the sun, which is opposite to the moon. It's fully illuminating the moon here, but we also have a Jupiter cazimi here. So that means that Jupiter is right in the heart of the sun, or it is completely engulfed in the sun's light. And when that happens, the solar light can wind up kind of taking on some of the qualities of that planet. That planet strength is also raised through that process. And so when we look at the moon, the full moon, it's not just getting illuminated by the sun, it's also basically getting illuminated by this kind of Jupiterian solar light, which is incredibly beneficial. It's also quite expansive. It tends to feel very lucky. It can be very harmonizing. It can bring a sense of order and wellness, understanding, knowledge, wisdom. And so that's what's lighting that up. So if there are these aha moments or these light bulb moments about you and your own internal patterns, even physical habits that you may have, again, the internal narratives and dialogues that you may have, this is why I'm saying it's so likely that it's going to be incredibly beneficial to look at that, and also that you're not going to be bereft of a solution along those lines. So I wouldn't be shy to really look at those things, because this period of time is also very likely to offer you a clear understanding of how to improve on this, how to heal around this. You may find yourself a little tired. That may also be somehow beneficial. You may need some rest, and you may have been pushing this off, pushing this off. This can wind up accumulating. And so if you are able to take some time out to just chill out, maybe to lower some social pressures if you can't really negotiate your workload, you may even wind up with these helpful energies out here with someone offering to help you with your workload or with your routines or with your responsibilities, taking care of something for you such that you're able to relax a little bit more than usual. And I would recommend taking advantage of that because it looks very helpful. Additionally, across this axis, the 6th house and the 12th house, often we get these notions of health, and it's across the board, wellness, basically, your well-being, on an internal level, on an invisible level, but also on a physical level. So this can also help you out a lot to find any solutions that you're needing along those lines. Maybe there's gaps in your well-being, like supplements or vitamins that you've been lacking. You may want to set some intentions around finding all of those things that are missing there, filling in those gaps. This can also help you to understand how maybe if you feel physically drained, if you feel tired all the time, if that in and of itself feels like a habit that you've kind of succumbed to recently, this could really help you to address that, to fix that, to find those solutions and then implement them in a way that's going to be effective. So even if these things haven't quite worked in the past, this is a period of time where it's much more likely to actually come to a good resolution. Now, additionally, while the 12th house has a lot to do with ourselves internally, the 6th house has a lot to do with the material world. Your daily routines, your working life, coworker relationships, teams that you work on, responsibilities, the things that you have to do, the effectiveness of the application of your effort, motivation to completing tasks. So that is also very likely to benefit from addressing the internal issues. So especially if you're able to lean into optimism, lean into rest, into healing, into balance, that in and of itself is likely to help to bring your routine, your mundane life into balance as well. So it's not just going to be an internal thing. It's not just going to be about addressing your health, but that can also then have a great impact on the actual results in the material world that you're getting out of your efforts. You may also find that during this period of time that there's a lot of evidence for the support for you that's going on maybe beyond the veil or behind the scenes. So spiritual energies that are kind of helping you out, you're likely to see that manifest more during this time with the sun and Jupiter and the 6th house shining a light onto the 12th house for you. So what are these energies behind the scenes that are helping you out? This is very beneficially like bringing that out in the real world so that you can lean into it, so that you feel like you do have the evidence. Maybe this is around some notion that you have or a calling that you have, just a feeling that you have that you weren't quite sure, is this wishful thinking or is this real guidance? That guidance is likely to be much more visible, much more apparent to you during this time. If that is something that you've been wanting to work on, your intuition, this can help with that quite a bit as well. This may also be working on your compassion. So say, especially if people are stepping in to help out, if you've been feeling drained and if you've been feeling somewhat unsupported, that can do a number on your level of compassion and desire to help out other people as well. But if it feels like that's kind of coming back into balance, you may feel like your compassion, your charitable nature, your desire to help other people out as well is reinvigorated or renewed. Other than that, I would just say, lastly, there could be some like psychological or emotional breakthroughs or understandings that you're able to come to with this energy. You may even feel like you're able to free yourself up from some old roles that you've played for some time. So again, the subconscious patterns, the internal narratives and dialogues, a lot of this comes from old roles that we played when we were young. And there may be some clarity around that as well. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces. So I do hope that this full moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me.